Hi, my name is Rachel Thompson. I'm here with Tom to present another edition of the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group Authors Talk series. We are doing this in support of the Easton Book Fair happening this October, and I believe October 21st is when activities begin. So check out eastonbookfair.com for more information. Anyway, we're going to start by telling you a little bit about ourselves. Our intention is to have a little conversation between authors to help readers understand where we're coming from. So, Tom, if you would please tell us a little about yourself and what you've been up to.
Thanks, Rachel. Well, I've been only writing since I passed the age of 70, believe it or not. But I always did a little bit of writing that never got published from when I was a teenager. But in the last 7 years, I've published over 4 books and more are waiting to go.
Wow, that's awesome.
I've been a lifetime educator all that time.
And what I will do is I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Rachel Thompson. And like Tom, I got a late start in life writing. I had a whole nother career before. And then an injury threw me away or out of my previous profession. So I always wanted to write, and I got serious about it. And I started learning about it in 2003. I now have 5 novels published, 1 anthology. I have another anthology and another novel written, and they will be coming out in another year or so, or next year, I should say. So, Tom, next question on my little list of questions here is, can you tell us how you got started in writing? What inspired you? What got your motor going, if you will?
Well, creative writing is really a combination of experiences mixed with imagination. So I went through a difficult period of my life in the 90s, which had me traveling, and the traveling set up my scenes for possible books. So my experiences in the 90s led me to start taking some notes, and those notes eventually found their way to a script and then to a computer and then off to a publisher.
So basically, you were inspired by the things that were going on around you, and you wanted to try it. Is that kind of how you feel about it?
Yep. Life is what inspires writing.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, how I got started writing was just a love of reading. At a young age, I read a lot. I love to read. And one day it just dawned on me to write, and that maybe that's something I can do. And then life got in the way and I had a whole nother career. But always since I was a kid, I just had this little desire to write. I didn't know anything about it, didn't know how. Through my career, I published little things here and there, no big deal. But in 2003, I had a devastating motor vehicle accident. And when you recover from something like that, you say to yourself, let's see, I always wanted to be a writer. Am I going to just not write, or am I going to go on procrastinating? So it was a life-changing event is what launched me into writing.
Well,
so very dramatic, I'm sure.
Mine was a little less dramatic. I remember near my house when I was a high school age, there was a huge tree, and I remember sitting down and writing a poem about the tree. So we always write from experiences. I started playing with haiku when I was in high school, and I did some rather off-colored parodies of songs. I was a follower of Mad Comics when I was a kid, which
Oh, yes. Yeah, I actually am quite a fan of Weird Al Yankovic, and I used to do that too, make up my own words to songs because I could never figure out what they were saying. So yeah, so it seems like you had an early bug or kind of a desire to write, even though maybe it didn't come to fruition until later. So you say you worked in education, and in my mind, I think that there's a lot of writing involved in education. So what's the difference between what you did professionally and what you are now doing, which is writing what your heart desires to write?
Oh, actually, I moved from traditional education to the charter school world, and that was very difficult and challenging. I didn't get into that till I was well into my 50s, and I wrote uh, two nonfiction books about the charter school world, which were both published by different venues.
I see. Can you show us that book cover again? I'd like to get a better look at that.
Well, this one was published through Kindle, Birth of a School, and that was about a school that I opened up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and that was took me 7 years of my life to put together.
Wow.
Then I subsequently wrote a book called Charter School Wars, which talked about the challenges that I faced over those years. And again, I didn't start really writing until I finished my charter school career.
You had a lot to say about it, and you were motivated to say something.
Right.
Yeah, I can understand that. I kind of feel the same way, like I have a lot to say, but chose to, or I now choose to say it through fiction because I started writing on a professional level in journalism, mostly to learn how to write and practice the craft. So I always try to go at reality through the lens of fiction. But you two have also written fiction. Is that true?
Yeah, my first novel was published this past February, and it's called Death Among the Pines. And it was a murder mystery set in South Jersey.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
a lot of my time during the 1990s when I was going through a difficult separation, divorce, and remarriage. So that put me in a place near the Jersey Shore, which was always close to my heart, and the Pine Barrens, which are a very mysterious kind of place.
That's an amazing coincidence. I grew up in Bayville, New Jersey, on the edge of the Pine Barrens, with all of the lore that goes with it. And of course, I had an early interest in Greek mythology and spooks and ghosts and goblins. And what better place to have an interest or be scared by such things than the Jersey Pine Barrens?
Well, now, do you have six fingers on one hand?
Not yet, but I'm trying to grow one.
Okay, the mythology is, and it's not mythology. There are people called Pineys in South Jersey that do have a six finger on one hand, and there are photographs to produce that.
Oh, yes, I know the area as a child all through my 60s and 70s. We went camping and all through there. Plus, my family goes back to the area for generations. So I'm very familiar with the Pineys and the clam diggers, actually. I'm
Right.
more in that vein, I suppose. But let us diverge to another question if we can. Um, we were talking about your fiction and what inspired it. And, I'm thinking that for me, and it seems for you and many other writers, some events in our lives become like a catalyst and it kind of propels us into writing. Have you found it to be that true in your life and why you write and where you write or what you write about, I should say?
Yeah, it's true. A lot of the places set in my mystery are from my actual life experience. Bars that I sat in South Jersey, a girlfriend that I made while I was there. So all the names are changed to protect the rights of the.
So why the mystery? Is that something you enjoy reading, mystery novels and such things?
Yeah, I've read a lot. I read quite a few. mysteries and, you know.
It seems to me there's almost a subgenre of South Jersey stories. It seems like a lot of people have gone there, including other people that I know in the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group. It certainly is a fun and interesting topic, and especially now around Halloween. I think now is the time people should go out there and take a look at your book. And by the way, where can they find your book?
My book was published by Austin Macaulay, but it's readily available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, so it's pretty easy to obtain.
Oh, that's great. Now, I write completely in a different direction than you do. And the people viewing may wonder, how can two writers that write completely different things get along? And my answer to that is, writing well is writing well. It doesn't matter what you're writing, you want to get it across. The kind of fiction I do is I go a wide gamut in the genre fiction. It's mostly science fiction, quirky, bizarre. I like to twist ideas together that don't belong together, so to speak. So a lot of my science fiction is in the vein of Kurt Vonnegut, like I call it social satire. And what I do is use these unusual settings as a vehicle to tell a story or get across an idea. So on one side, I do that. On another side, I write historical fiction. And actually, I'm starting to venture more into what would be considered literary fiction. So as a person that writes all across, I don't see any problem with anywhere you want to go with it, which brings up the next question. What are you working on now? Where do you think you're going to go next?
Well, I do a blend of history and mystery. And what I've done is my protagonist in Death Among the Pines, B.J. Gleason, continues through 3 additional books, which I'm currently preparing for publication since Death Among the Pines only came out in February. So
Excellent.
I hope to see a string of them. And settings are very important. So while BJ was in South Jersey for the first adventure, he ends up in New Orleans just after Katrina for the second. And all these are based on serial killers.
Uh,
The third book takes place in San Antonio, and the fourth book in South Carolina on the Grand Strand. And of
wow.
course, these are all places that I've spent time and visited, so I can add reality to what I'm saying.
Oh, that's awesome. Actually, I guess you would consider it, generally speaking, just modern fiction. You're taking place, your books are taking place in the near past or in the near future, as I understand it.
They're just a few years behind where we are. So, uh,
Ah,
first book takes place at the turn of the century 2000, and then we grow with BJ through the additional books.
that's
Try
great.
to keep track of my characters and their friends. And I've learned a lot, believe it or not, from my daughter, who happens to be a top selling children's writer. So I've
Oh, really?
gotten a lot of clues from her. For instance, she keeps almost a journal of her characters. She's written a series called Dragon Masters, and it covers, she's on her 25th book.
Wow.
So she's had to keep track of changes in her characters. So that was a learning lesson for me.
Well, speaking of which, can you speak a little bit about your process? Everybody has a way of going at it. For me, I have been a person that has plotted my first fantasy novel. I spent a whole year plotting it, and it's a good book and it works very well. And then I've also written books that I plotted on a napkin or hardly plotted at all. So, I've gone the gamut. What is your process like? How do you go about it once you have an idea?
Well, I'm a highly organized individual, so Once I got the word that my first book was published, I immediately started uh, plotting, if you will, for the subsequent novels and putting the pieces in place from my imagination again and from my experiences. So, I've been in and around the swamps of Louisiana and New Orleans, so I know what those are. So while the first murders take place in the Jersey Pinelands, in the second book, they're taking place, they're finding bodies washing up in the swamp in the body. So,
Oh, it gives me the creeps just thinking about it. I've spent many of the evening in the Pine Barrens camping with Girl Scouts and brownies and everything else. And my family always camped down in the Warden Tract State Forest. That's a very creepy place to find a body.
yep.
So,
Well, I need to share an anecdote with you, talk about odd situations. I was golfing in South Jersey, just outside of Atlantic City, in a 9-hole course, and I hit a ball into the woods, which I too often do in golf. And when I went to find it, I found myself literally standing in the middle of an old graveyard. And when I looked at the tombstones, they all had markings from the late 1700s. And when I finished playing the course and went in and saw the manager, he explained to me that was a Revolutionary War cemetery south of Atlantic City.
wow, there's one in the neighborhood where I grew up. I
Yeah,
knew of it as a child. It's still there. It's
yeah.
right in the middle of a little land development that used to be the Veeder farm, and a little fenced in area, and they're all graves from that time period. Now that's inspiration. Is that the sort of thing that inspired this story, or
Yeah,
come
things
from?
like that, stories. And again, as I got into South Jersey, I heard all these stories about the Pineys. And of course, you would be familiar, Rachel, with the term shoebies.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Shoebies, by the way, for the listeners, were Northerners that came down to the Jersey shore, and they didn't have much, so they went to the beach and they put their shoes in a shoe box where they had their lunch. Took their lunch out, kept their shoes in them. So,
Oh yeah. See, that's the kind of historical fact that goes into a novel that really makes a novel realistic and feel right. Even though you may invent the people, you may invent what they're doing, but these places and time, that's the kind of detail that makes it feel real and feel realistic. Now, the kind of stuff I write, my current book, let me show it to you if you can see it. I don't know. This is called The Book of Answers, and this takes my character 10 million years into the future. So you can imagine there's a lot of invention going on here. But it starts off on familiar ground, and the kind of ground that we all should be familiar with. I put my character, an immortal that lives into the future and experiences human de-evolution. Everything changes, but he doesn't. It's a tongue-in-cheek tale, but I had to paint a very accurate picture of the 1950s and 60s and 70s and everything we're all familiar with, because without that, the reader isn't going to sort of accept or have a feeling of the ring of truth, so to speak. So anyway, that's my latest, and that's the weird stuff that I write. Actually, I have a lot of different short stories. I have 21 now in my collection called Stalking Kilgore Trout, and I just have another anthology which I've finished and copyrighted, which I haven't put out yet. Should be out in a few months. That one's going to be called Another Anthology, the Same but Different. I know it's a goofy name, but
well, I'm
that's what readers want. They want something else from you. They want it to be the same, but not really the same. Readers want something different. So that's what I'm trying to do here.
Well, I've shifted genres a little bit. So I've done fiction. I think with the four novels, I'm not sure whether there'll be a fifth, depending on publication. But in the meantime, I did a spiritual based book on journaling, and it's a perennial journal. It's a journal that somebody could use every year, not just buy one every year and throw it away. But it's a combination of which most spiritual journals do. There's a Bible verse at the top. There's a comment from me, and then there's a space and a question for me for the reader. So that's what sets it apart from the normal journals that are out there. And I just was notified about
Oh.
2 weeks ago that Lighthouse Publishing, a Christian publishing house, is going to publish that. Now,
Oh, that's beautiful. That's an excellent idea too. Interactive book, so to speak, for adults, and not your typical bathroom book, let's call it, with jokes and such things, which are fun, But yeah, that's a great little inspirational idea. And I could even imagine the artwork involved, because I'm also an artist and a musician. So in my mind, I see the musicality in the idea, it's and the concept of adding art with it would be just wonderful. What a
thank
great idea. So congratulations on that.
you. But that's up to the publisher always, what
Of
they
course.
want to do with it. And they did say they were doing some color in the journal. So I'll have to see what that leads to.
Well, given the how the publishing has changed over the years, everything is electronic and they don't have to set up print runs as they used to, print on demand being what it is. It has the price of having art inside the manuscript has come down, and even in some cases makes very little difference, especially if you're using black and white. So I'm seeing a lot of books now being published with fancy scrolls to introduce a chapter and other kinds of interesting things. So that's something to think about. We're talking shop, so just an idea. I'm always thinking on three levels because as a writer and an artist, a visual artist, I'm always trying to mash these things together. And oddly enough, I have done and published cartoons for newspapers and magazines. I never wrote a strip or anything like that, but I've done a lot of greeting card stuff from my youth when I was very young. I would do little watercolors and send them out, and some of these card companies would give you $25, that sort of thing. Like the first thing I ever published was back in the 70s. It was a science fiction story, very bad. But in those days, there was a lot of demand and they were hungry. Somebody actually paid me money for it. So, I was in college. I was surprised. It inspired me. It's why I write now, probably. But what was your first time published? How did your first getting your toe wet into publishing?
97 is when I submitted the book Charter School Wars, and I sent that to several genres. And believe it or not, it was picked up by a publisher in London. And the bad news for that, for an experience, is they priced it out of the market.
Yeah.
So they were charging $60 for the paperback and $80 for the hardback. So quite obviously, I didn't make any money on that. But you know what? Uh, and I think for most men, well, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm not in this for the money. I'm in this to help open up people's minds and hope to interest them in different ideas. We always need to be thinking in this world. We have too many uh, models out there that call for us moving into small boxes instead of opening up our hearts and our lives to what's.
Well, that is absolutely true. And I think that it's highly commendable that that's your goal and your philosophy. And I do believe most writers, deep down, myself included, we're writing for the reader. We're offering what we offer to share, for them to learn. In my case, I want to entertain them with my goofy stories, and maybe they can learn a little something or get a few ideas from my stories. When I write my nonfiction stuff, I'm always trying to help the reader. It's always about serving the reader for me. And I do believe most writers have that feeling, because if you're not writing for the reader, not in a sense, you're always writing for yourself. You're writing the things that interest you, that you are passionate about. And if you are passionate and I'm passionate, then we hope that the reader will be passionate too, or at least um, be able to absorb, understand, and benefit from what we're trying to say and what we do. I'm actually writing another book, a nonfiction on the side between my other projects, about living in an RV. It's a practical guide. I lived in an RV on the road for 5 or 6 years. So I'm writing a fun book about that. There's no money in that book. I'm sure people aren't going to run out and buy it. It won't be a bestseller, but somebody that wants to have an RV and wants to learn about it is going to find that book valuable and helpful.
Well,
And yeah, I'm not writing it for the money. I'm writing it because maybe I can help somebody.
there again, we write from our experiences. I have a whole list of potential books I could write one day, Lord willing. And for instance, last year I was teaching adjunct college to high school students, one group in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, and another group in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And the schools were so strikingly different that I have a title called The Tale of Two Schools, which will really point out how different schools can be, both positively and negatively. And it also points to the kind of mess, sorry, our current educational system is in.
Well, the history of that is true. And, as a person myself interested in history and economics, and writers really do need to be interested in everything. That's how we build authentic worlds. But I understand it. I kind of have seen the history and studied the history of how the educational system has developed and the effects that it's had, and, the takeover of the educational system by forces maybe that don't have education in their heart, you know. But we won't go down that rabbit hole. But I understand where you're coming from, and I'm glad you're out there showing people the other side of it that they don't usually get to see.
Right.
I think that's super important, and that's kind of what I do in my quirky science fiction. I'm creating or looking at an idea and making it really big and unavoidable, and showing how people react to it, to sort of be a reflection of human nature. What would you do if this happened to you? Or if, and I come up with some very bizarre situations, times, and places. Um, but, I write in the old fashioned idea story. A lot of early science fiction writers weren't so good with characters and other things, but they were good with ideas. Today, you have to be good with everything. I develop my characters. I spend a lot of time on it. I spend a lot of time on world building, but I also spend a lot of time developing the idea, because that's what writers want. Now, it seems to me your nonfiction books are very important books. I would like to see you, or are you putting some more articles out about it? Are you submitting small essays anywhere? To
No, I basically just worked on the bigger picture, really. Uh, Again, it's what motivates us. So I've always liked to think big and out of the box. So,
Yeah, I've always been impressed with writers that think out of the box and go big. And some of my favorite writers do or had done exactly that. For me, it's Tolkien, it's Vonnegut, it's all the big names, Asimov and Clark from the 60s and 70s. But for you, who inspired you? What writers out there have you learned from and enjoyed yourself?
Oh, there's so many names buzzing in my head right now, Rachel. I can't really even come up with them. But I do a lot of series writings. Uh, for instance, there's a series of about 4 books called Maxwell and King, about a couple that become a active detectives, and that's kind of what's happening in my 4 novels, as he develops a relationship with a detective in New Orleans, and it takes another 2 books for them to get settled. But I'm
See,
giving too much away.
that's good because today you just can't have a detective story. You've got to have layers of other things. It's about the characters too.
Yes.
It's about the ideas. It's about everything else, not just who done it. So yeah, that's very cool. I like the idea of mixing a little romance in there. I'm going to start trying to do a little bit more of that. I recently branched out I wrote a short story, a romance story for my anthology. My first attempt at something romantic, I guess.
Hmm.
And I think it turned out pretty well. This particular little story was about 2 people from 2 different worlds that miscommunicate, and the expectations of my protagonist were crushed because she didn't understand what she was looking at. A little lesson in life, and cut scene. That's how short stories work. So, but yeah, long works take a lot of focus and concentration. So, have you ever written any short stories? Is that something you're interested in trying?
No, I haven't done any short story writing, actually.
Uh,
Not my genre.
well, it's not for everything. Oh, what I find for me, what's most fascinating and inspiring about you, besides the fact that you're writing for the benefit of others, is the fact that you started late in life to get serious with writing. So, I assume that you must have had some good understanding about writing. But, you know, what really kicked it off for you? What really got you to say, okay, I'm writing this thing?
Well, I think it was at a point where my charter school work had kind of dissolved and cut back, and I am an overactive senior citizen. I have what's called adult attention deficit disorder. I have to keep busy. And so I had been laboring on that first novel for a long time, and then I really put uh, the shoulder to the grindstone and worked to get that published. Once that got published, that really kick-started me to moving forward. And I will continue. I don't. I want to see the publishing world works slow, particularly
Yes.
traditional publishing. It takes almost a year until you get your first notification of actual book sales. So that will pretty much determine whether I stay with this publishing company or take the product somewhere else. I have,
Yeah, unfortunately, the wheels of publishing grind very slow, and there is a big demand for the nonfiction stuff, especially um, things like what you've written, and I'm sure what you will write more on. Unfortunately, uh, that's part of the reasons I went with self-publishing. I just don't have the patience, and of course, like you, the money is not the issue for me right now. After I get so many books done and I have nothing better to do, then I will work at promotion and trying to sell more. But for me, the important thing is to get the material out there.
well,
Get it.
marketing is an important piece, as I well found. So I've done Again, I got a yes from the publisher in February of 2020. It took a full year for the book to come through to publication. So it takes that long in the traditional market. And once that came out, I've been involved and I'm still involved in book presentations, talks, book shows, etc. So I've done over 15 of those over the last several months, and I've got several more before the end of the year.
Well, actually, you'll be speaking at the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group monthly meeting, and as I understand it, you will be doing a presentation. Can you tell us a little about that?
I'm doing a presentation on journaling at the next uh, Greater Lehigh meeting, which I think I'm a little calendar stretched right now, but I think it's this coming Saturday.
Yeah, I believe the 22nd,
Yeah,
which unfortunately I will not be able to be there because you're in Pennsylvania and I live in Florida. But I often will attend these meetings by Zoom, but I do believe I have another engagement on that day.
right. And
So
at,
we already, oh,
at,
I'm sorry.
at that presentation, I'm going to talk about the importance of journaling for writers because that is an important vehicle. I've been actively journaling for the last 12 years while I'm doing the writing.
Uh,
That kind of keeps the creative juices going, which a writer needs to do.
well, when you journal, do you are you keeping like track of what's happening in your life, or are you just writing your thoughts or your impressions of things, poems, or
Well, it's a combination. I have an extended family of over 25 people.
whoa?
Over the course since 2010, I've written a journal dedicated to each individual member of the family. And when it's done, I wrap it in brown paper and mail it to them. And
Oh, I love that.
some of them have lost them, I'm sure, and some of them read them. And they are spiritual in nature. They usually, that's why I wrote my own spiritual journal, because usually the journals that I have would have a verse on top, and I'd write a little bit about the verse in relationship to the person and include something about life as it goes on. So,
Oh, that's a tremendous amount of work. Bless
well,
you.
no, it's not because I would get up in the morning and I still do this. I would get up in the morning and the first thing I would do, along with my morning devotion, would be to open up whatever journal I was writing on, or journals, I should say, plural. Even now, I finally covered the whole family, so now I'm journaling to friends. So
Ah,
so I have two current journals going to friends, and I also self journal, which is a little more of a diary. And I've done several of those. So I sit down with my cup of coffee and my thoughts for about 20 minutes. Journaling doesn't have to take long. It might just be talking about the weather. It might just be talking about a word that jumps into my mind. But
that's awesome.
that keeps me motivated and going.
Have you thought about doing a memoir? You've had such a fascinating life. You've done so many things.
I think my journal work by itself are kind of memoirs.
Kind of speaks for you.
Yeah.
That's funny. You should mention about writing journals for others. Every Christmas, I'm an artist. You know, I do watercolor and ink and all that. I love to make homemade Christmas cards. So, and I often will make caricatures of the person who the card is going to. So that's my big thrust for the holiday, is make my little handmade watercolor Christmas cards. But that too takes a lot of time. So once a year I'll take the time, but it's an awful lot of fun. And that's a great idea of yours. I hope some of our listeners will actually endeavor to journal and maybe endeavor to make a homemade Christmas card, for example. Would be wonderful. And I would
Hopefully,
encourage people to write if they can, if they want to.
hopefully anybody watching this will be able to get our contact information from uh, the people that are running the conference, and they can feel free to contact either one of us.
Oh, for sure. The Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group has been around for about 30 years. We do a conference every year, and it's a great place for writers to meet of all kinds. We also have monthly meetings. There's all kinds of programs. But writers need writers, and
Yes.
writers help each other, like your daughters helped you, and everybody at Greater Lehigh Valley has helped me. So I would encourage listeners out there to definitely come to one of our meetings. Check out the website, Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group uh, at .org, which is glvwg.org. So yeah, come on out and check out our monthly meeting and come and see Tom.
A gift I got from my daughter. Be careful, or you'll end up in my novel.
Well, if people want to learn more about us writers and what we do, and definitely come and check us out and check out the Easton Book Fair. And is there anything you'd like to add before we close, Tom?
Not that we get it that quick, but my email is tlubben, Lubben, 1957 @gmail.com, and feel free to email me at that address. And we, both Rachel and I, would like to hear some comments about our presentation this evening. And I want to thank the book fair for having us.
And that very nice. Thank you, Tom. And this has been me, Rachel Thompson, for the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group. And to learn more about my books, you can visit my website, which is my name shortened. It's rctom.com. It's rcthom.com or .net. And I chose it because it's easy to remember. And we thank you so much for viewing. We hope to see you at the book fair. Come and see us at the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group monthly meeting. And please keep reading. And it was nice to meet you all, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Very much, folks. Signing off now.